then it's Hogan, and then it's Savage, and then it's Warrior.
25 or 30 years, I might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Yeah, every time I look up on this monitor, I see who's the big guy. Always great to see you. Thank you for making the trek up here. I know you had to be up here for some other stuff, but coming here to the office and HQ and
yeah, you guys got a cool place to work.
Yeah, we're always looking.
Not a bad place to have to go to work.
Always looking for something to do with it here. So thanks for coming up here and making this happen.
My pleasure.
Anytime I can sit with you for any length of time and chat.
These days, it's nice to be able to do.
It's like the old days.
The first time that I can recall seeing you was when you were in a tag team with Regal. Right. It was main event, right, on WTBS.
Yeah, WCW,
Yeah, and at that time, because I didn't know whether you were or you weren't like really French or not. I don't know enough to know if it was a bad accent or was it a bad accent.
It was a bad accent.
Exactly.
The pugnacious Frenchman, Jean-Paul Levesque.
Wunderkind, Alex Wright. Bonjour, mon ami. Listen, at Starcade 94, you meet Jean-Paul Levesque, and I'm going to expose you for the commoner that you are.
I just remember you doing the pedigree on a guy. It was an extra, and the guy almost coming like straight down, and like, oh my God. Apparently he took it really well. I mean, he wasn't hurt, but I don't know. Was that your first one, or?
It's funny, when I first came in here, I had started using like a version of the pedigree in WCW, and then they wanted me to do, I think they had seen Dallas do the Diamond Cutter or something, and they wanted me to use that. So I used it for a couple of matches on TV. I didn't feel comfortable using it, and I felt like somebody else was already doing it. And I said, well, I have this other move that I did before, and I did the pedigree. And I remember Chief coming to me like, well, why didn't you do that the whole time? I was like, because you guys told me not to. You know? But that kid that took I think his name was Champagne, was a friend of the Hardys. He came in to do an extra, and he's a good hand and all that stuff. And when I went, we just talked about it beforehand doing the pedigree, and when I went to do it, he went straight up and down, and I tried my hardest to hold him up, because I was like, oh no, like I'm pile driving him, and he landed. I thought I killed him.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit. And I was like, you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. When I walked back through Gorilla, everybody was staring at me like, what'd you do?
Oh my God.
And I was like, he said he's fine. I didn't. It's not like I threw him up there. He just jumped up there, and he was totally fine with it. So we got lucky. But for me, seeing you was, the Rockers, and I know I saw you prior to WWE. I know I saw you prior to that. I just don't remember.
Probably AWA, I would guess.
I would think so. Probably AWA. But I remember even at that time thinking to myself, like, because you guys were such a good tag team. I don't mean this as a knock to Marty, but you were so dynamically different than Marty. It was like Shawn Michaels and then Marty Jannetty for me. And when I watched it, I remember thinking, like, how long before somebody pulls him out of that and just says, we're going to run with him.
Yeah.
It looks like it. Oh! Wow! Attention, that's like a whoa!
At that time, in the land of New York, you were a smaller guy.
Right, for sure.
Especially then, everybody was 300 pounds, 330 pounds. But the work and style was so dynamic. I remember just thinking then, like, man, at some point they're going to break him out and he's going to be huge in the business, like just as a singles guy.
I'm glad you knew.
It was.
At that age, I didn't have the ability to think down the road. I just.
There's certain guys that you saw, to me, in the business at that time that broke a mold.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing Jushin Liger for the first time and thinking, like, geez, it felt like a left turn from where the business was. You were a paradigm shift in the business to a different, maybe a smaller guy a little bit, but a more athletic, high-flying, like more exciting style that sometimes when you would see that and how dynamic and fast-paced and high-flying you were, and then you would see the bigger guys that were slower and plodding, it was almost hard to go back.
25 or 30 years, I might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
It's the last thing I say. It's the last thing I say nice in this.
Right, for sure, I have no doubt. I'll just say, for me, the guy watches it was Tiger Mask.
Yeah,
I can remember
another
seeing
guy,
him.
Tiger Mask,
But just-
Dynamite,
Yeah.
right? Like you,
Yeah.
Liger.
That's the thing, guys that you could see where their work was beginning to
Yeah.
take us to a different time, for
Yeah,
sure.
and then I remember thinking the same thing about Kid, obviously with a completely different look, but that was another level of just doing crazy
Yeah,
nonstop.
and how fast he was moving.
Yeah, crazy nonstop flying stuff. And then I think about kids today. I just had this conversation with Javon the other day to say, right now you're the kid doing the shit that nobody else has ever seen before.
Getting bouncy. Oh, gee, cutter. That was Javon Evans going to do here. Frog splash for the pod.
Focus on punches, kicks, focus on this other stuff. Because a year from now, there'll be a kid doing shit that you were like, how's he doing that?
Right.
And we'll all be like, just going like, remember when he was doing cool shit? Now he's doing the cool shit. And I said, you got to have all that other stuff. Otherwise, that quickly goes by the wayside. I say it about you all the time, and I'll break my own rule here and go back to saying something nice. The fast paced and the flying stuff is just what got you looked at.
Right.
All the other stuff, the fundamentals of everything else, punches, kicking, you being a pit bull, you selling so emotionally and investing people in, that's what got you over. The other stuff just made you look. And then that's the stuff that solidified you as being so good.
From a training standpoint, that's why it's one of the reasons I don't ever tell anybody, hey, again, all the stuff people told me, you're going too fast, slow down. I feel like all those things will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
For the most part, and when they make it up to the main roster, that it becomes about psychology and timing and selling and telling a story and different aspects, and also whether it's injury, time, age, whatever.
Time forces you to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and getting more over.
Yeah.
Again, you're realizing that you don't have to do as much. So the slowing down process kind of happens.
I don't have to do the second flip off the top rope because the first one they were still going crazy on.
Exactly.
So I can just let that one be.
Right. But that's interesting because, again, that's something I don't think about enough, which is that, again, there will be in a year or two, another guy coming and doing equally,
There's
if
a
not
kid
better,
that
cooler stuff.
has already learned his stuff and is trying to figure out what
Build
the
on it.
next level
Yep.
that I can do to that, right? Like,
Yeah, which is exactly what I was doing.
yeah,
Back in the days, watching all the VHS tapes and then thinking about, okay, how can I add on to this?
yeah, and that's what progresses the business. I don't buy into the old timer. Well, the business has changed, or it changes. Everything changes.
Right.
Like the pace of it changes. The pace of the NFL, NBA, all that stuff. The game changes. That is what fans want in that time. But the fundamentals will never change as long as you have the fundamentals down, and you can then begin your own process, as you said, of slowing down and pulling back and learning that, oh wait, the bigger reaction I actually get, the more sustained reaction is the selling.
Right.
And the emotions and the theater of it. Like
Right.
you can only get them to go like, oh shit, so many times. Never seen that before. I've seen that before.
Right, and that's, again, I've mentioned that to people, and Javon's one of them, is it's like, that's what gets you noticed, that's what gets you in the door. But then you're going to have to build on that from that point forward.
He came to me, I talked to him a few weeks ago about like changing up his punches and focusing on that because he's got the other stuff down. I said, so you don't need to learn a bigger flippy thing. Like you got that. Just go learn how to throw a punch better than everybody else in this roster. And then he came to me this past TV and was like, he came over, boss man, I need you to watch my punches tonight. Like, and he immediately came back through the curtain, walked straight over. It's like, did you see him?
Yeah.
Better, getting better. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're getting better, dude. Like,
He's a good kid.
yeah, he's
No doubt.
hard worker, good kid. Like, I love him. Yeah, he's awesome.
Thanks for taking him from us.
Yeah. That's the gig, man.
That's when I
You make
understand.
them, I steal them.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Now, those tryouts, it's crazy the kind of pressure and anxiety I have now with those.
Trying to find the right.
Yeah. Think about Tiffany and Bronson and Lash, and you want to keep that track record going.
But the funny thing is a lot of those guys, nobody remembers the sort of like once they graduate and they just kind of like blend into the crowd, people are like, yeah, she didn't come from NXT, Tiffany or somebody like, yeah, she did, yeah.
they
Found her, then recruited her, and then, you know what I mean? Like, but you lose perspective of that over time. You lose perspective of how many people come up. It's an interesting conversation actually Steph was having with somebody in the Saturday Night Live world the other day, and they were saying, like, and this is all due respect to him, but it translates to our business, it was saying how incredible Lorne Michaels is. Imagine you have a successful hit television show, comedy show, and Will Ferrell is your lead character, and the show's incredibly successful, and then Will Ferrell leaves the show. And then it just gets successful again with other people in there.
Yeah.
Like in any other world, that person goes away and the show ends. In our world, since the 60s,
Yeah.
you know, Bruno leaves, and then it's Backlund, and then it's Snuka, and then it's they leave, and then it's, you know, not all at the same time, but then it's Hogan, and then it's Savage, and then it's Warrior, and then it's just keeps evolving, and it's a testament to the creative. We come down there and rob you blind in NXT, and then you just rebuild it. And, you know, for us, Cena goes away and AJ Styles retires, and people move on, and people are getting to the place where, and to me right now is the time when it's the most evident about how successful the system is and how much it works, right? There's this moment in time where your top stars are getting to the upper deck.
Right.
And before they get too far into that upper deck, you got to look at what that balance is. So in a very short period of time, we make a commitment to it, and all of a sudden, you know, when you look at just WrestleMania this year, but I look at that's just the start of it, because to me, to be honest, 26 into 27 will be when all those people really bake. But when you look at this year alone, Obafemi, Trick Williams, Javon, there's so many things that you can just point out in this time where it is, as your stars of the show begin to move into different places or go away, and you just put other people back in in those slots, and they become bigger. The show becomes bigger, the show becomes better, and people just keep engaging it. It's a fascinating process, but I don't know of anything. Saturday Night Live is the closest comp that I can think of to what we do. So as far as like who's ready when, in my opinion, everybody's different. You know, I just said it to Trick the other night. It gets the WrestleMania match, and he's so excited, and he was being thankful for all the positioning. And I said, look, I'm thankful that you're ready to get there. I said, so now look back on the frustration that you had of being in a time where you knew you were ready in your mind. We were screwing you over by keeping you in developmental and trying to get you. I said, but we were getting you ready for this. We believed you weren't quite ready yet, and that you could benefit more, even if it was just slightly, from baking a little bit longer. And that time will pass, and you'll be frustrated. Almost every talent that has come from NXT to the main roster has come to me at some point and said, what am I doing? I've been here forever. Like, why haven't they moved me up already? Why is it like I'm losing my mind waiting? Like, they all do the same thing, but there's a certain point in time where you just want to be sure. No one's ever 100% ready.
Right.
Ever. And you move guys up when you think that they are. And sometimes a guy's still not ready, but you think, well, he's learned everything he's going to learn here.
You all had made the deal with Trick, and that, you know, and I had mentioned that, hey, I think he still needs a bit more time.
And you were right.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And I felt like, you know, he needed to go back over to the heel side. He was a really good babyface, but it was kind of going down a road to where it was getting very just focused on him being a baby face and what his opponents could do for him to help him, you know, continue to grow as a babyface and get more over, and continue to have success. And I had mentioned that I feel like you need to be a heel, and because in my mind, he hadn't quite understood the benefits of what your heels do for you as a babyface. And I needed him to kind of jump on that other side to try to understand that now he was going to have to be that guy that certainly gets his stuff over and continues to do his stuff, but has to now make that other individual, and to understand how much work and effort and psychology goes into that, and to help
appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when somebody's doing it for you, you appreciate it.
And yeah, exactly. And to understand that it's a mutual, you know, kind of agreement going out there, a business partnership that you have with the individual going out there. But he's one I would have, you know, he's one that I would have loved to have been able to, you know, certainly build a brand around. But I'm never going to keep guys from success.
Yeah.
That's something I don't ever certainly want to do. And again, and then there's Oba, who I think was incredibly well-rounded. He's the one guy I'll say he never once, complained about anything, never asked about money, dates, where am I going, what am I doing. It's funny, I saw an interview from his the other day, and I guess he got frustrated, I guess, because there are times that he would, have finishes or sequences that he wanted to do, and then I would change them all the time. And of course, at the time doing it, in my mind, I'm thinking like, you've been doing this for 2 years. You don't have any idea where we're going. But, and of course, and he recognized all that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things he said in the interview, is that Shawn knows where we're going and what we're doing and where it's all going to go. But it frustrated him a little bit at the time. Point being is that though he never once ever showed that kind of stuff. He's just been, he's, I'll say it as a consummate professional and I don't know, just
mature beyond his years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's such a pro and it's so far been easy to work with, and just a sponge. Like even the little things, like I see him pick them up and see him make changes without anybody telling him. It's tough in the beginning because you're trying to find that ground between being a character, being something that's believable, being a version of them, but a big version of them,
Now in this role, because of the many sort of changes or the evolutions of what we do here, sometimes it'll be more, we might be in a time or an era that it's more character based. And then we might slowly shift to a time where it's a little bit more reality based, and trying to find that balance between the two, because I guess that's the thing. I never know where the business is going to go, how is it going to change, how you guys up here may be seeing it, and how you want to forge forward and making sure that we're kind of in line with that.
The overwhelming makeup of NXT is, right, it's like harder core fans that love pro wrestling. So they'll buy a pro wrestling character.
Right.
That maybe when you get to Raw or SmackDown, they're fans of the product and they're into it deeply, but they're much more casual fans where they might be like, that character is kind of hokey, I'm not really buying that, or kind of goofy or something. It's a very pro wrestling trope. If you have talent that are more character based, it comes down to the time. What are people buying? If somebody's really good at the character stuff, they'll buy it. Sometimes you're not. You need to go more reality based. I think it just depends on what
and also for us from an NXT standpoint, a lot of times we have these athletes that's coming, even the words character. Having to, define that to them and help them understand that we're not talking about a garbage man or a clown. We're just talking about a part of your personality or something that is of interest to you. And that's, again, so that's sort of a process that we go through as they come in, to just at least have them thinking about is how do they see themselves being portrayed if they were going to make it on NXT. Again, we have, people that, from the creative team that will spend time with these individuals. They'll share their interests, share different aspects of their personality, find out if they've put a lot of time and thought and effort into it, and if not, trying to get them at least starting to do that. As you know, it's always so hard. And one thing, I guess I was always so appreciative of how I got to come about being sort of HBK, the Heartbreak Kid. I was, an individual that started to go singles, and I can remember at that time there was still a form of creative services, and someone had drawn up, this biker guy with the glasses and sort of my first original look.
Yeah.
But they wanted to call me the Idol. First it was going to be Shawn Michaels, the Idol, but then it was just going to go straight to the Idol. And that just really scared me because I didn't want to ever stop being Shawn Michaels. And I can remember asking, like, geez, I like the look. Can I start to at least go with that, but then try to find out whatever this other character is going to be? And as time sort of went on and the music, it just kind of organically came about. And then of course Hennig mentions the Heartbreak Kid during color commentary
Yeah.
one time, and then
Is that who did it? I never knew where that came
yeah,
from.
it was Kurt Hennig.
Not shocking.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's in a Chris Ledoux song. It used to be a Moonlight Bandit, used to be a Heartbreak Kid. When he first told me about it, I was like, yeah, it's all right. You picture yourself being, I don't know, tougher, more rugged, and I wasn't sure. But then I was just doing a promo one time, and all of a sudden, one of those things where you don't really know what you're saying, and it just comes out.
Stuck.
From that point on, it kind of stuck. And as you know, somebody who knows me in real life, like I don't have that much coolness in me. in
Almost
my life.
zero. Yeah, almost zero.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. For that moment in that, in that place out there, I could do it. And so it just all seemed to work. Anyway, I say all that we try to encourage, I certainly do, in NXT, them, finding that as well. As in, again, give it some thought, but I don't want to rope you into something. I want you
really
to be able to find
hard.
something that comes natural to you.
It's really hard for somebody to find something that is not them and so outside of their comfort zone and make it believable. Like the amount of people that you can say did a character like that was sort of top shelf,
Right.
like Taker, where they just said, hey, you're the Undertaker, this kind of dead dude. That very few people can do that. I think you could have given that gimmick to 100 people and 99 of them would have failed. One happened to be Mark Calloway, and he made it one of the biggest things ever in the business. But that's so hard. I think about that back in the day, like Kamala or something like that. Like, just
Would have been
made
tough
it.
for me, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Kamala? Yeah, it would have been
Yeah.
tough. Yeah, I don't.
No, but I mean, to be
Yeah.
given something you just weren't sure. I don't know. Again, I don't consider myself a great actor.
Yeah.
So I think that
Look,
would have been challenging.
When Flair came to me and said, like, go in the other room, cut promos in French, you're a French guy now. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, wait, what? Once we started to do our stuff with DX, like, people talk about that to me all the time. Like, hey, who was coming up with all that stuff? It's like, nobody was coming up with it. It was just us being us. Half the shit we were saying and doing was shit we were saying and doing in the car to some degree. And, it took off because it was so real. It was one of the things I think fans, I know certainly for me, I think fans love the most about pro wrestling in general is this fantasy world where anything can happen. So you have moments of drama, you have moments of like, you're angry because somebody beat up your favorite or whatever, or you have moments of intense action and excitement and all that other stuff. And then you just have light moments where comedy can happen and it's the most ridiculous situation, but it just works.
Right.
First of all, you have to have the talent to be able to execute the comedy thing. That you give somebody that doesn't have comedic timing or the chops to do it, a comedy skit, it's horrible. So it's
Right.
one of the worst things ever is watching a comedian die a terrible death. I think is why it's always super important for characters like, R-Truth, Miz, Danhausen,
Danhausen, yeah.
even a Joe Hendry, where he kind of blends the
Right.
both. Like in one moment he's in ring giving you intense stuff, and then a minute later he's giving you some comedy stuff.
Right.
And it's not the most intense character of all time. People want to lose themselves in the product and have every emotion under the sun.
That's one of the areas where I admittedly sometimes struggle I enjoy the comedy and I enjoy the high drama. I'm also into the Wild West and the dusty stuff, maybe to a fault. And I've always felt that you were way better at the cool characters. That again, it's just, I honestly don't do as well. I'm fortunate that again, to have an Oba and a Trick, that can be cool. I'm telling the talent all the time. I don't know if it's a good thing, but I got asked a question the other day by Ricky Saints and Joe Hendry about, again, us, how did we, again, the whole Attitude Era thing, and how did we know, how did we feel, and just trying to explain to them at the time with all the different, Sally Jesse Raphael, the Springer Show, Geraldo, just the time and the reality show just being new then, and that it was just an era where it was palpable that you could feel that there was this shift.
Yeah.
Just trying to, kind of explaining that to them, and like, hey, well, do you feel anything now? And I said,
Yeah, I feel like you shouldn't do that or I'll fire you.
yeah. But I said, I'm 60.
Yeah.
That's going to have to come from your generation. I said, if the 60-year-old guy in the room is the coolest dude in here, that's not good.
Right.
Because I wasn't even cool when I was hanging around you guys. I at least played it off for a little bit, but they're hungry and want to, find kind of that next wave. But helping them to understand that, I don't know. There's certain parts of you that you've got to learn to bring out, and if it's there in real life, the people will buy it.
Yeah.
If it isn't, they're not going to buy it no matter what. But I've always felt that's one thing that you do really well.
If you pigeonhole somebody in just being comical, it's hard to get them out of that.
Absolutely.
The perspective that you have as you age, you have to acquiesce that to them. Like, here's the points we want you to say, and here's the idea of your character, but you've got to put it in. I certainly can't write for Trick, to address it directly. I saw Kev make a mention of Javon and saying, well, I wish they treated his character differently. It's a little too much of this for me. Somebody told me about it. I was like, it's just him.
Right.
You know what I mean? That isn't us telling him to, that's just who he is. Like, that's how he acts. That's how he talks to me backstage.
Yeah.
That's how he is in the afternoon. And then we just kind of give him the gist of what he's going to say. And then he goes and says it. But that's just who he is.
Yeah.
And similar thing for Trick. I don't even know what the fuck lemon pepper steppers are.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. It shouldn't. Yeah, it shouldn't. I can feel it when he says it, the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Or for the most part, because I can feel the crowd react to it, or I can feel the things that are clicking for him. But I can't tell him, if he runs dry on cool shit to say, he ain't getting it from me. The character that you put around it, the emotion that you put around it, your spin on it, all that stuff is what makes it great.
And that's the hardest part.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick says to me all the time, name a great coach that was a megastar in their sport that then became a great coach. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
He'll say to me a lot of times, like, Larry Bird was like the highest level of performer that then became a high level coach. But like Michael Jordan couldn't do it because Michael Jordan couldn't understand how people just go do this. And then they can't do it. And he's like, I don't understand why they just don't do that, right? Like, just because you were great doesn't mean you can teach it, doesn't mean you understand it, doesn't mean you have that. So it's a tough thing to do, to let them go be themselves.
At our level, because we go from no experience, and then moderate experience, and then the most terrifying is a decent amount of experience, but think they're, Luthez.
Yeah.
So
that is the most rampant thing in the business.
right.
Yeah.
I can see there are times when they want an ABC answer because they're a former athlete, and again, if you step this way and get up underneath them, there's a technique that you can do this to make it work. And in our business, there's not really that. There's an unspoken, again, connection between you and the audience, what you're doing in the ring. Yes, you're going through your match, but you're also, telling the story with your face and your body. That's very hard to explain in 1, 2, 3 ABC kind of methodology.
In a way, it's a sport, but it's also like an art form. You can teach somebody the sport thing. You can teach them to get faster. You can teach them to throw further. You can teach them, you can't teach them the IQ of the game.
Yes.
And as well as I do, there's probably been more great people in our business that weren't great athletes, that didn't have the best in-ring skill, but had the most charisma and the most emotion and the most connection with the crowd, but weren't the greatest in-ring performer of all time. Mm-hmm. Say something nice about you again. You were the combo of all those things. You could do the character, you could do the promos, but the in-ring stuff was A+++. That's rare.
Yeah, and that's the question you always get. How do you know, how do you pick a superstar? How do you know? It's like, it's a tough question to answer. Yeah. It's like, you can't describe it. You kind of just know it when you see it.
just
Otis at one time.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
Dude, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
in my office here, and I remember calling Matt and saying, like, who's the big bald dude? Like, I can't keep my eyes off him. And he told me who he was, and I'm like, how's he doing? He's like, I'm like, I can't stop watching him. Like, everything he does. Like, he's dying in there, but he won't stop.
He's huffing and puffing, keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. And I'm just watching. Every time I look up on this monitor, I see,
Yeah.
where's the big guy? There he is. You never know. That's a tough thing, like the personality factor. And I think about it all the time. Like, so many people, when John was first getting the, like, we're going to go to the Cena kid, and everybody was like, that ain't it. It was.
Yeah.
But he had all the other pieces of it. And the in-ring stuff came over time, but it was never smooth in-ring performer. He was just the personality and the charisma that just made everything else work, you know?
Yeah.
If there's a kid out there that's wanting to do this, that's wanting to come in, that does what we did, which one day turns on the TV, sees pro wrestling, and goes, I have to do this with my life, what would you tell him?
Well, and it's going to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but it would be to come through our doors, honestly. That, to me, is what keeps all of this going. The idea of NXT and what you built there, and honestly, the culture. Again, the culture of everybody being there, none of us behind the scenes. You know me, I've been committed to this place for 40 years, but none of us want to be up here.
Yeah.
All in the most positive way. We all want to be the people that are helping take the young men and women that come through our doors and help them to have the possibility to be able to have the lives that we now have, which to me, you know, I don't know, I'm sure you're used to it by now, but it still blows me away. I don't know, to be where we're at.
Yeah.
In our
It does
lives.
me too. I've never
Yeah.
lost perspective of that. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah. If you want a real shot, a real possibility, and not that there aren't, I'm sure there's wonderful schools out there, but you're just not going to find a place that cares more, because everybody really is there pulling the rope in the same direction, and it isn't about them. That part is genuine, because each of us do take a piece of that. I don't know, good fortune that all the young men and women have that go up and are successful with you guys on the main roster, and then they come back and visit, and it's like, geez, whatever, you were right, and everything you said, different aspects.
Yeah.
No different than your children.
I was just going to
You're
say,
the dumbest guy in the world until
Yep.
they're 25, 26. I mean, you kidding? My kids now think I'm not the dumbest guy in the world. Like, okay, I get it.
you had a couple of tidbits in
Yeah.
there. While,
Every now
while
and
you were
then.
doing dumb shit, you had a couple of good ones.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my advice would be very similar, is just like, treat it like a profession. Do everything that you can, and the place to do that is here. In one building, you have the best strength and conditioning, the best trainers to get you in the best shape and keep you bulletproof. You have the best in-ring stuff. You have the best minds in the business that can train you. You have the best promo people. You have the best psychology people. You have every tool in the world, and then continue to treat it like a profession, because what you do with those tools is up to you. Being around that and that excitement and that energy level, where it's not a job, it's not a profession yet, it's just hungry kids working their ass off to get something more out of life. It's inspiring. I miss it every single day.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, your job's taken.
Yeah. That I've taken.
There's no room.
Taken and done better than I did, man. Thank you. They've told us we have to wrap up, so this is where we're supposed to say goodbye. But if you could come upstairs for 20 minutes, I'd love to meet with you on
We'll
something
say
else.
goodbye for now.
Yeah.
Fair enough.